Hello, welcome back to the Being Whole podcast. Today, I sit down and speak with a young mom named Lupita. Lupita is a mom of three with PTSD. She lived through childhood sexual abuse and a couple of addictions. Now, Lupita makes videos on Instagram to connect with others who are on similar healing journeys. And she's also working on a podcast to help people who might be in the same place she was by offering support and tools that can help. Let's get started with today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Being Whole podcast. I'm so excited here today. I have my guest, Lupita, and she is going to tell us a little bit about her story. And we actually met on Instagram, which I think is so cool. So welcome, Lupita. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Hi, everyone. Well, Lupita. I am 25, almost 26 years old. I have an Instagram page where I post literally videos of me just expressing myself and kind of my humor and how I cope with things and my, PTSD and all of that. I do have 3 children and a husband and a dog that I love. But yeah.
Well, and one of the things that it was so striking to me, for those of you who can't see us on the video, you look so young. So when I found out you had 3 children too, I was like, oh my goodness, wow, how does she do all of these things that she does? And I was just so interested to hear you talk about, yes, just your journey and how you fit everything in and how you do what you do.
Yeah. So, my story started when I was very young, with like going through childhood abuse and stuff. It really sets you up for failure as a teenager, as an adult, because you carry all this stuff with you that a lot of people don't have. Especially, I think it depends on like your personality type, how you deal with trauma. But for me, I was a rebel as a teenager, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol up to my early adulthood. I got married with my husband very young. We've had children very, very quickly after marriage. Which probably wasn't a good idea, but I feel like my kids really made me who I am today. And I would have never started my healing process if it wasn't with them. My PTSD really started showing up when I got pregnant with my first daughter. I went into this new world of just, anxiety, depression, which really made me question. And that's when I finally was like, hey, I need to heal my trauma to be even able to raise my children. And it really started that.
Yes. And that's, oh my goodness, that's such a hard space to, especially like, that's one of the things when I talk to people about healing, if you have kids and you're in that process, it's so hard to be the parent you want to be and be present because you're so in the depths of your own pain and trying to understand it. And then you also see the ways that your own pain has caused hurt, or, you've coped in different ways. And so just that inside itself is like, it's the whole other healing journey that you have to go through. Right.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, too, it can kind of bring you back to these different places that maybe you didn't want to revisit or didn't think you had to revisit too.
Yeah. So like in my life, I kind of have these 3 major life events that I kind of it's like what kind of made me who I am. It's my trauma. I had a premature baby. My second daughter was born very early. We had a lot of really bad health situations. She was in the hospital so long, a lot of near-death experiences. And for someone that was already very hurt, it was really, really dark place. And then my addiction. So those 3 things are like something that I'm so proud of myself for, going through it. And now it's like, I'm showing people and making those videos so people see that they're not alone. I used to feel so much shame. And it's like, if I would have seen someone doing those things, I probably, would have felt better. So it's really important to kind of show up for those people.
No, exactly. And that's, what I think is so great is that, anytime you can find somebody you relate to on social media or their content resonates with you, then it can help somebody else feel a little less alone. And that's why, I don't think there's such a thing as too many people saying the same thing, because you never know who it's going to relate to, who's going to resonate with, or who needs to hear whatever you have to say in that moment. And just for you to even be so open to talk about, it was, you even said right away, like how childhood trauma kind of sets you up for not necessarily the best space. And that's a whole other space then you have to reconcile too. Do you have to go back to some of those choices that you've made, or recognize kind of how your coping mechanisms maybe weren't the healthiest? And
And really, like you said, that shame of like, you're carrying around all the shame for things that you did, but the things that you did a lot of times are in response to something that happened to you. So it's
Yeah.
so, it's so interwoven with a lot of different things there on that journey.
Yeah, one big thing I think that kind of fired me up into, showing up more is, and with my experience in my family, it was something that they kind of avoided talking about, like, hey, like this big thing happened, but we're acting as if nothing happened because that's, that's very uncomfortable. But then it's like it shows up in a lot of different ways. With me and my addiction, I know it was because of suppressing that trauma that I had. I have a brother who is also an addict and is not doing very good right now. And I know it's because of the same thing. So it's like, if I have to post videos on the internet to start bringing awareness in the conversation, like, I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the unfortunate thing. First of all, I'm so sorry about your brother. I know it's just that it's addiction is so challenging. And to anyone who doesn't understand it, who looks at it, who maybe thinks, people should just get over it or they could stop. I mean, the layers and the levels of emotions and physical responses to get through with addiction, it's so much, right? And for you to just be able to recognize that you don't want other people to be alone in that space, and you want them to feel like they're seen, because that is what's, again, so much of it, why people don't even talk about things like addiction, is because it is still so shame filled, and it's also looked upon unfortunately by many in society as something that is just you did to yourself, regardless of the circumstances. You should be able to move through that. And, it's interesting when you talk to people, most people do numb out in unhealthy ways, and they really do. And so when you really start to get people to connect with their emotions and their bodies, it's like, okay, you maybe didn't drink all of this over here, but let's talk about this other situation, or your online shopping or whatever it is. And, starting to see the ways that we all just like kind of numb, really.
And I did that like a lot. And I went through like drugs and then like alcohol. And then when I was leaving that, it's like my phone, like, okay, now I'm on my phone all the time, just really trying to escape like with anything. And it's just like really no, I need to live my life and I cannot. And like I also did some research and I saw how brains, change through childhood if you've been through trauma, and like how people react differently to like certain medications if they've been through stuff. So it was really, it felt nice that like, hey, it's not just me wanting to do all of these things. It's maybe something that I need to like go to therapy for, going, do some healing so I will not need, to numb out. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's just another layer to talk about too, about the different symptoms that it can cause, how childhood trauma can creep up in so many ways, not just through behaviors, but then again, like you said, the brain patterns changing and how it changes your nervous system response. And that's something that I think like we're only really now beginning to hear about. And that's honestly only if you're looking for it, only if you're paying attention, right?
Yeah.
It's not like something like you and I are like, oh yeah, it's everywhere, but it's because like we're in that space, right? And so for the general, that to just be part of the conversation would be wonderful, to get people to understand, like, here are all the ways that childhood trauma of a variety of forms really shows up for other people. Because I think too, it helps you then understand kind of some of those reactions, like you're saying that you have, or some of the things where, I mean, I myself had no idea. I did not connect any of it until just a few years ago. And it was just like eye-opening. And I know, like you said too, that all of a sudden you're like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's a lot.
So when you picked up and you were like, okay, videos, what made you decide that videos on Instagram was the way to go? Because I have to tell you, they still terrify me. And so every time I see you and you just are like, yep, I think it's so awesome. So what
I'm like
helped
the
you
shyest
decide
person.
that?
Yeah. So it's like it's crazy that I do that because I'm like literally the shyest. I feel like the first one was the hardest. The second one was pretty hard as well. But I felt it was like a really, I love humor and it's like a way that I cope. So I felt that I could express myself in a healthy way, with humor and just really letting those emotions out. I feel like that really helped.
Were
Yeah.
people receptive of that when you started? Because I know a lot of times you are talking about things that people don't joke about necessarily addiction, or people aren't joking about some of these things that you are, or in the way that you are, because you're very raw and open about it too. So what was the response like from people when you wanted to do this?
The response with the public was really good. I think I had more issue as in like my personal life. People, that know me, like from family and personal people, they're the ones that kind of got triggered. Other people were like, thank you, like, yes. But
Yeah.
of course, it's like people that are involved kind of like get upset. But it's like once you grow up and you realize, now I realize I'm an adult. I grew up and I had like a teenage mentality for so long, like the trauma and all of that really stunts your growth mentally. And so I felt that, people could really tell me like what to do, like boundaries were taking away from us, like
Yeah.
such a year, like a young age, we have no idea what it was. So being like, hey, this happened to me and I'm gonna do these videos. Like if that bothers you, you can unfollow me. I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna stop.
Yes, yes. But that right there is such a victory statement because of what you said, being able to recognize that you get to make those choices and that's something that you're deciding to do, and that other people's perceptions or opinions of it are irrelevant because this is part of your healing. And
Yeah.
that's such a powerful step right
And
there.
because I felt scared of making choices, even with my daughters, just putting the boundary. And I felt bad. I felt like I was a kid and I had to listen to everybody else until I was like, hey, like I'm gonna be 26. Like I can make decisions and I'm capable of making the right ones for me and my family. And
Mhm.
if people don't agree, well then, that's okay.
Yeah. And really being able to recognize that and understand that. Have you
Yeah.
had a lot of people, since you've done the videos, do you have people who ask you more about your experiences or who want you to share other things?
Not technically as in my, abuse, more in addiction, and mental health. That's like a big thing that people, I'm talking with right now. Just kind of like bring awareness and like different type of addictions. Like even right now, I was struggling with marijuana, and
Mhm.
that's a whole other thing because people hate people that say, you can be addicted to marijuana. It's like they take it very personal. So even opening up to that and having, people like, hey, like I'm struggling, but I'm too embarrassed because, people don't see it, and just kind of like being there for people that,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, I think that that's I noticed that right away. That was one of the first things I noticed about your account is because people don't say that at all. It's like, I think it was one of your hashtags that I remember. I was like, whoa, okay, go you. Just because I think it is opening up this space of conversation too, to even, okay, let's be honest about what any drug use looks like, because everyone that could be okay for somebody in some certain realm or whatever they think is like, it doesn't mean it doesn't still have properties that are not healthy. In some ways.
Interesting also to see that, people would come in my inbox or in my, comment section, but you wouldn't see that with other, addictions. If somebody was opening up about like food addiction or porn addiction that are not like drug based, they wouldn't go and tell them like, oh, well, that's not addictive. That's just you. Or,
Yeah.
it's just kind of like new and people don't really know about it. So it's kind of.
Hey, isn't Lupita so lovely? I wanted to take a moment and ask you for a favor. While you are listening or watching, can you share the love? You can rate or write a podcast review if you're listening by scrolling below this episode. You can give the video a thumbs up if you are watching on YouTube. Doing this helps others find the content and lets me know that you love what I'm putting out there. Thanks so much. Let's get back to today's conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's just always interesting to me too, that anyone would feel it necessary to be like, oh no, that's not what's happening to you. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. Like I'm experiencing my body right now. Are you?
Yeah, I had to tell myself that, to stop like answering, because you can be on Instagram fighting with people on your comments like all day, but just really knowing the truth and knowing when it's enough, it's enough. Like you don't have to answer to all of them. It's okay.
Well, and something too, just even people learning to recognize what their own body responses are. Like you said as well, that your body has changed. You think like your response to medication, mine absolutely is different. I metabolize things differently too, so even just being able to have awareness of that, whether it's regard to marijuana, whether it's regard to alcohol, whether it's regard to, whatever it is, caffeine. And that's the thing too, is like so often we're just not paying attention attention to the ways that anything is impacting us or why we want it to impact us, right? Like that's the thing.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Dopamine Nation. It's really good. It's very interesting. So it's a book I recommend for you guys.
Well, it really is, because it's about that, seeking that dopamine hit, seeking that. And you can, when you talk about that, even with people, like you were saying too, with your phone, I mean, that's always a big one for me. I have to, like, I'll go on detoxes from it, or I'll set timers, or I tell my students too, I'm like, go on and look at your screen time where it breaks it down, or I'll delete like the social media apps off my phone. And it is just like sick and wrong to feel how many times you go to pick up your phone to look at it. And then you're like, oh, yeah.
I just had to have noise around me for some reason. I feel like when I stopped doing drugs and I like started the healing process, I had a lot of like alone time in my head. The fog had cleared and I could think, and it was like I had a lot of time, I guess you can say. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with what did I say before? Maybe I'll remember.
Oh, you were just saying how, like once you the fog kind of cleared in your brain and you were able to really feel.
I always needed noise around me. So I would either have like a podcast on or like a YouTube video on my phone, but always like it would always be on, and the noise would constantly be on because I guess I couldn't just sit quietly with myself. And then that was another thing, like, hey, like, why can't you sit quietly with yourself and really like digging in and like asking questions to yourself really helps.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And that's something where I stopped like watching TV and listening to music for a while too, then, just so I could like really, once I wanted to sit with myself, I was like, okay, what is this? And just really, like you say, asking yourself questions. That's all I did. If a feeling came up, it's like, why? Where does that come from? What does that mean? And, not like we have to know the answers to everything, and we're not going to, because sometimes it's like, okay, I don't know why this feeling is there. It's just there and I'm going to accept it. But I think it's that original questioning part when you're becoming aware that then like allows you to get to that place where now the feelings can come in and you're like, okay, yep, that's here. And I accept it. And I don't have to question it anymore.
Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of like the hard work. Not a lot of people, I guess, kind of want to do it, but you really have to get in there and clean it to get, the clean water out. Like at first it's disgusting and horrible and you don't want to, and it's hard. But once you get through that, like it's really nice.
I know it. And that's the thing too. I think that is just, really encouraging people that it does feel hard in different times, and, recognizing that, and acknowledging, okay, this is hard right now, but also then keep finding people like you, keep finding other people who keep saying, yes, that's hard, but look at what happens when you keep going, or look at what's on the other side of it. And that's why too, your videos are so important, just to give people that, like, it is hard and it might still be hard every day, but this is why you do it, because you get all this other happy stuff.
And even with like asking questions too, I had tried medication before for my mental health, and it did not end well. I was actually very depressed while on medication. I had like, it was like a movie scene when I remember I just like flushed all of my medication down the toilet.
Oh, no.
Like I felt like when I was like, thinking about suicide when I was younger, I was never gonna do it. It's like, I guess you call it ideation, if I'm saying that correct. I've always had that here and there, but when I was on that medication, it was kind of more serious and not just idealization. So I flushed it because I was so scared of getting down a rut that I would not be able to stop. So like, before I get that bad, let me just flush them. Like a week later, I was in the ER because you're not supposed to quit them cold turkey.
No, you're not. Yeah.
I was like terrified of medication. And then, I went to my therapist again because a lot of my physical PTSD symptoms started showing up. My blood pressure was through the roof. I was nauseous and sweat. I was very sick physically. And I asked the question, like, I tried this medication. It was just horrible. And then I found out about this whole other class that's not like a benzo and it's not an SSRI. I don't know if you heard about it. I think it's Busbar. And it's been really, really good. And with therapy, I think it's just like, I never thought I could find a medication that works for me. And just asking questions is you really find help.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, and thank you so much for being open about that journey and sharing that, because that's something too, I think, it feels so impossible because you feel alone. And the way to get out of that alone feeling is to ask for help, right? Or is to admit that something's happening. And so the more we can say that things are happening, or to show people that, or to talk about different remedies that we've tried, or talk about different things. And, even too, like, I know so many people are like, well, I tried therapy and I didn't like it. It's like, oh, I get that. I've had so many therapists, like seriously. And it really is like finding the one who works for you. And I know it can be such a challenge for people to even get in. And so I get how that inside of itself feels hard when you're already in a space where everything feels hard.
Yeah. And it's like, when the thing I'm working with my therapist is that for some reason, I don't see myself, I can't make plans for future things, even like a month or two. For some reason, it's either like now or never. And I kind of have that mentality of like, I'm going to do everything right now, or I'm not going to do it ever. So it's like, hey, I'm going to make a therapist appointment, but if they don't give it to me this week, like, I'm just not even going to go, because it's either now or never.
Yeah.
My therapist always said me that we're going to be alive, like, at least 20 more years, at least 15 more years. You can make plans. And it was really hard for me, but it's really therapeutic once you can set plans. I'll make an appointment for like a month from here, and it feels okay. And it was something so simple but so hard for me back then.
But that's because, your nervous system was so activated that then, because when you're in fight or flight, it's like, no, that thing has to happen right now, because you don't know how many things could happen in between now and a month from now. Right. And so I can't be having anxiety for the next month. So that's why it's like more of a, no, it's right now. So like, that's so cool that you can now be able to like recognize what's happening and to be able to feel safe enough to make those appointments out into the future, to make those plans. And that's something that's so important too. Because again, like all of these things, if you just randomly added all these up and tell people, they'd be like, what? How is that related? What? That doesn't make sense. But it's so real. Just these little ways where you don't understand, you maybe aren't aware that there's little anxieties coming in, or little sensations that you're not noticing in your body and then reacting to as a result, or what have you.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting.
So what are your continued plans for this? I know you love making the videos, and what are your hopes? I know it's, kind of a bunch of different things with the trauma and with the addiction. Are there some things that you like more than others, or where are you hoping to take things?
I'm still I guess, experimenting what fits best. I want to start a podcast soon, kind of, talk about addiction, spirituality. Since I kind of hid for so long, now it's like I'm trying to see, I love Jesus and I love church, but I've never even read the Bible. So now it's like I'm reading the Bible, I'm studying this to see kind of like what I like. Videos, podcast, being a guest. I really want to write a book too one day.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm totally here to support you on all of it. I think it sounds awesome. I think that too, without even realizing it, we're hitting on so many different things that are just true of childhood trauma. Like you're saying, you're finding out what you like. And that's the thing about like healing from trauma, is like when you're coming out of that, you're almost like a newborn, and you have to rediscover like, who am I? What do I like outside of all these things that I thought I liked because I was pleasing somebody else, or I was trying to stay small, or whatever it is, And so really that kind of awakening, once you get past some of that dark space and that awakening of finding out, okay, who am I? What do I want to do? It can be scary, but it's also really exciting too, to step into that.
Like even now, back then, my triggers and stuff with PTSD are so much better than they are now. I still have a lot of healing to do. I feel like I'm going to do that for so long, and I'm okay with it, because I can still enjoy my life now without having everything fixed,
Yeah.
And I really learned that kind of the hard way, because, my daughters were so small and I had, PPD, but it's like, I could have enjoyed them then, even if it was kind of dark and scary and sad. I could have been, enjoyed that more. And that now I take that into account for like every other thing. It's like, hey, I'm not healed, but I can enjoy things. I don't
right.
Perfect.
And that's hard too, to keep yourself present and be like, okay, I can enjoy this. But like you said, your triggers, they become less and less, or they don't impact you in the same way. Cause I think it's never something any of us are ever going to be fully healed. There's never, I don't believe that. I do believe that we each have to continue to do the work, and there's always another layer, and you might think there's not, but it's going to show up somewhere. And so you might as well just expect it. And so, but it feels so much more powerful to me now, like when a trigger does come up and I can feel it and I can diffuse it, or I can move through it. And it's like, yeah, okay, I did that. And I feel powerful now, instead of, or even when it brings me down, it doesn't spiral me like the way it used to. And so like really recognizing that space, instead of being like, oh, I'm triggered again, or, oh, I had a meltdown, like recognizing how far you've come with it too is so amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's really, you think that it's never gonna be okay, or you're never gonna, be better. And then one day you wake up and there's like no flashbacks, or, you reach a goal that you didn't think you would ever reach. And then it's like kind of really being, like, I think it's like a quote they say, like, you're in your answered prayers, from before. So it's so true. It's like just being thankful how far you've come and just keep growing.
Right. Well, and it's so hard too when you're in it, you want it to happen faster. You're like, I don't want this to have feeling anymore. I just want it to go away. And that is, it's completely understandable why we numb out, right? Because you got to get that feeling away, or I can't do this anymore. Or I'm ready to be over this, or I don't want to think about it, or whatever it is. But it's like, once you really can move through some of that too, and recognize that you're probably spending more time and energy thinking about how you don't want to heal it, or you don't want to go then, once you actually move. Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, now you have all this creative energy, you have thoughts, like once that fog is cleared, because so much of it is we're in our headspace thinking about it but yet thinking we're not thinking about it because we're pushing it aside, but we're really not.
It's funny because, like, even like when I was pregnant the first time, that my mental health really kind of started deteriorating. It was like, I didn't think it was because of my trauma. Things happened, and like I went through addictions, and I honestly, the trauma didn't even come to my head until it was like one day it was like, hey, like obviously that affects you. It's like, stop trying to pretend that nothing happened and that you're okay. Like what happened was was so big that it's okay that you're not okay. And like just going that way, it was like I was running like a backward race, trying to like fix, but I didn't even know what I was fixing until I really sat down and realized. And I was like, okay, then it's like you actually make the progress.
Right. But you don't, like you said, you don't always realize what you need to fix, or you're working on some part of it and you don't even realize, what else is there or what the real issue is. And so that's where too, just having the support, and of having other people, if you have a therapist, or having other people to work with, or finding people again on social media or wherever it is who do resonate with you, so that you don't feel so alone. Because that's, as we've talked about, that's like one of the hardest spaces of this. And really the only way for us to kind of work through that is to have the conversations that people, you said people don't want to have the conversation because it's uncomfortable. Well, it doesn't get more comfortable by ignoring it.
Yeah, like what, then that does not do good for anybody. People think that they're like saving you or helping themselves, trying to not, but it doesn't help anybody. And I feel like you kind of just waste your life away, hiding those things and not being fully yourself. Because I really believe that I couldn't be fully myself if I would still be trying to hide or not trying to fix what happened.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think I was fully able to show up as myself at all. And there are still some then people as a result who I've known my whole life who I feel like do not know me, or if they haven't talked to me in the last even several months, I'm like, oh, you just don't even know me, because I wasn't able to be myself, in part because I didn't know who that was, or it was so clouded and hidden by so many other things. Right. And so like being able to show up as yourself. And the beautiful part about that is, these 3 wonderful children that you have, and you're showing them that healing process. And that's so cool, is that healing those patterns so that they don't become generational patterns that then they have to go through.
And I have the 2 are really small. They don't really, talk, but I have a 6-year-old, and I've explained to her, even some of my triggers. I've had to have conversations with her, and she's okay with it. Her love language is touch. I don't like, and for someone like me that went through trauma in the beginning, that was something really hard,
Yeah.
to get her, but like really just having conversations. You might think they're too young, and I feel like not everybody has to have these conversations, but for me and her, it was like the best thing. Like, hey, you might not be able to do this thing with mommy because she doesn't feel okay right now, or like, I don't feel okay, but give me like a couple minutes and then I'll go and cuddle with you. And just be honest, it really, really works.
No, it really does, because the thing with kids too is like, if a lot of times we don't explain things or we don't tell them why. And if we don't, a lot of times they think it's because it's something they did, or they internalize it, or they think then it's their fault or what have you. So really just being able to let them know, hey, this is my feeling, so that then they can also separate like, oh, those are mommy's feelings. And then she's going to be okay. And these are my feelings and I'm over here, so that they don't think it's like their job to also change your feelings or make everything okay for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and now she really, is open. Like, hey, mom, like, I don't feel okay, or like, I'm gonna go to my room, and she doesn't want anybody, and she's like, I want quiet time. So like everybody, respects her quiet times. It's really nice seeing that it also like really shows up for them, and like giving them permission to express their feelings. And if you don't want to do something, you don't have to. It's your body, your choice. Like, hey, go give this guy a hug, or go give this family. Really just respecting themselves. Yeah.
No, I think that's it's such a great thing to do for kids, is to really give them and empower them with those tools, then to be able to say, yeah, this is what feels good to me, or this is what I need right now. And to really recognize that, because I just think about if I would have had those tools as a kid, even if I, trauma or no trauma, whatever it is. But I think everybody has childhood trauma of some kind, but it's like, really being able to do that. So many adults can't do that now. So if we start equipping our kids to do that, then we can prevent a lot of this space that I think that we struggle with otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of, I guess, a silver lining of it really, grew our relationship, and kind of, it's really nice.
Yeah, no, it is. It's one of those things where when you get to that space where you share some things with your kids, or when you're able to, tell them different things at age appropriate levels, where, I think that I think my kids too are a little more emotionally mature and aware, because of the things that they've seen me go through, because of the things that I've talked to them, and it's changed, different level of empathy for certain things,
Yeah.
and that's also important. I think, it's just as dangerous to sweep everything under the rug and pretend there are no problems, because then kids don't learn how to talk about issues, or talk about problems, or talk about things that are bothering them. So as scary as it can feel to be vulnerable and state those things, it really can be helpful.
Yeah, it's like, might be uncomfortable, but it's really a win in the long run. You'll see, like, at first, when it wasn't easy, like opening up to her, like telling her those things, and I kind of felt like a bad mom, but then it's like, once you go past through that, you see the good out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so excited that you were willing to come on today and share more of your story. Is there anything else that you want to share with us, or things that you're excited about, or pieces of your story?
Well, I feel like we were all over the place, but that's exactly where I am at right now. But, a lot of more videos, a lot of more fun stuff coming, hopefully this year. Very exciting.
Well, but that's the fun thing about being all over the place, is people get to see all of the different facets of you, and now they can go follow you and see the different things that you pick up on, and the ways that you are healing from so many different things on your journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again for being here, Lupita. I'm so excited that we had this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Here are a few takeaways from today's episode with Lupita. Number 1, once you find yourself entering motherhood, there are times you may be faced with your past trauma. It's so important to be aware and be open to doing the work to heal these wounds in order to offer the most solid foundation for your children. Number 2, it's important to find a healthy outlet to release your feelings. Lupita found a beautiful way to offer support along her healing journey by making videos on Instagram. Number 3, it's so powerful to be open and curious with your medical providers to find a medication that works for you. Not all medications will work well with your personal body. And as our bodies are always speaking to us, listen to what it is saying to you and ask for help from your medical providers if something doesn't feel right. Number 4, when you begin to look at your past trauma, you may think it's a small thing and then realize how much is really hidden underneath that is also needing to be healed. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you join me again soon. You can find Lupita's Instagram link below in the show notes if you want to follow her journey.